I loved Scouts as a kid. There was nothing better than camping and just having fun with all of my friends. And my dad was almost always one of our leaders, so that was great. Now, the first year I could go to a full Scout camp, we went to Camp Mapledale in Utah, and it was one of my favorite experiences ever. Zip lines into the lake, canoeing, an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Every night we would have night games and also probably spend way too much time pranking other Scout troops and the camp leaders. Now, that year we had an amazing troop and won almost every competition they had. We were also a big handful for the camp leaders as our pranks were epic. That's probably because our leaders helped us plan them out. Now, everything from cooler raids to the final day prank of reorganizing all of the signs around the camp, which made the maps pretty much useless. Now, we were also pretty good about protecting ourselves from retaliation. One night, another troop decided to run through our camp in a raid. They didn't realize we were prepared, and most of them ended up on the ground due to the rope we had strung around the camp. Okay, I know that's not very leadership-oriented, but no one was hurt, and it was a ton of fun. But one of the memories burned into my brain actually relates to the topic of trust. Most of you probably know what a trust fall is. We were first introduced to this concept at the camp's obstacle course. Part of the course had about a 3-foot wall where you stood on top, crossed your arms, and fell backwards, and the rest of the troop caught you. Well, one day back in our camp, someone suggested that the pole that held the sign for our camp would be a great trust fall. Now, we, of course, thought that was a great idea. Now, before I go any further, just a disclaimer that today I would never let this happen with any group that I was a part of, and no one listening should try this under any circumstance. The reason for the disclaimer is that the pole that the sign was on, that it required anyone, even the adults, to actually climb the tree to reach it. I don't know how high up it was, but it was too high. But when you're young and the leaders are on board with it, you don't think about the danger. So I don't know how many kids did the fall, and I can't even remember if I did it. Probably not. But let me share a couple of things I do remember. Now, in order for the trust fall to work, everybody had to do their part. The person falling had to keep their arms crossed and fall straight backwards. Everybody on the ground had to keep their arms interlocked and stay put so that you could catch that person. And if you did that, everything was going to be fine. We had enough boys and leaders on the ground that if those things happened, it would be okay. Now, one young man fell backwards just fine, but he threw out his arms and he bloodied the nose of one of the folks trying to catch him. Not a big deal, but it did make everybody pretty gun-shy about the whole process. Now, after that, another young man went, and instead of falling straight back, he sat and threw his arms out. Well, when that happened, everyone scattered out of the way. That's not a good thing. Now, I remember my dad, who's a pretty big man, standing there with that young man in his arms. He had caught him by himself. If he had stepped away, he would have landed seat first on the ground, and there would have been some pretty significant damage, because again, it was pretty high up. So after that young man fell and my dad caught him, one of the camp leaders, someone we didn't know, but had been with us for a few days during the camp, decided they would give it a try. Many of the boys in the troop had already taken the fall with no issues, so you would think it would have been easy for him to do this. He was older than most of us, and that should have made it easier as well. No, not even close. He climbed the tree just fine, but as he shuffled out onto the pole, we could see his knees just shaking. It was so bad that he started to shake the pole and the tree it was attached to. He did not do the fall. He just couldn't get the courage to do it. So why would he not do it when boys much younger had no problems? Well, it was because these boys knew everyone that was on the ground to catch them, and rapport and trust had been built up for quite some time. This camp leader had only known us for a few days, and that was just not long enough to build up the trust needed. So there you go. There's 2 lessons that you can learn from this. First is that once you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And then second, you've got to build up trust, and it can take some time to do that. But once that trust is established, some pretty amazing or even crazy things can happen. So if you want more on this story and more on trust, tune in to episode 6 of Leaders Lift at www.leaderslift.net/listen. Or you can check out more of my content at www.mountainebleconsulting.com.